Exile in the Southwest, the rise of the Crown Princess's little palace maid. Chapter 1 The Beginning of Exile. On the southwestern border, miasma permeates the air and wildfires blaze. Bonishang, once despised by the palace, embarks on a journey of exile, dragging her tattered bag alongside Guchanexai, once dubbed the criminal prince for treason. It's been 5 years, who would have thought that we are still alive? Guchanexai smiled at the corner of his mouth, but his eyes were as cold as a cliff. Bonishang sneered, being alive doesn't mean there is a way out, it's better to say. This is our new prison. Their place of exile, called King Yun Pass, is extremely desolate, with high mountains and waters, and wild beasts rampant. When they first arrived, the two set up a grass shed overnight to guard against miasma and wild wolves. The life of everyone shouting and beating has now changed to a day when everyone shouts and beats but no one pays attention, and their mentality slowly shifts from fear to numbness. Chapter 2 Southwest Adventure. One day at dawn, Bonishang climbed to the top of a mountain and gazed down at the small town below. Shrouded in mist, it felt like a dream. She was startled to see an emerald phoenix, its wings trembling slightly, a vision like a fantasy. Did you see it too? Guchanexai appeared beside him, his eyes burning. The phoenix hovered in the air and finally landed next to an ancient well. A low chant came from the bottom of the well, the sound was like a gukan, and it was like an ancient god. Bonishang's heart suddenly shook, as if he sensed some kind of power. At this moment, she vaguely understood that the place of exile was not only desolate, but also had secrets forgotten by time. Chapter 3 The Crown Prince ascends to the throne. 5 years slipped by like sand through fingers at King Yun Pass. Suddenly, news arrived from the imperial city. The Crown Prince had ascended the throne and issued a general amnesty, allowing all exiles to return to the capital. Bonishang and Guchanexai looked at each other and were speechless for a long time. Guchanexai sneered, "Do you think we will go back? Will we be reborn or die?" When they returned to the imperial city, they found that their fate had already been rewritten. Bonishang was pardoned as the crown princess, and Guchanexai was pardoned as a dowry and entered the palace with the crown princess. Bonishang's heart was shocked, and the moment he lifted the hijab, his pupils shrank slightly. Isn't this my handsome brother-in-law? Guchanexai lowered his head and smiled, with disdain and joking on the corner of his mouth. I came back, not for you, but to avenge myself. Chapter 4 The First Examination of the Court. In the court, Bonishang was weak on the surface, but in fact he was secretly scheming. She looked at her brother-in-law Guchanexai beside her, and secretly thought in her heart, since fate allows us to meet again, there is no need to stick to etiquette. On her first day at court with the crown prince, she was met with sidelong glances from many of the courtiers. Bonishang smiled, thinking to herself, 5 years ago, I was a despised maid. Today, I'm the crown princess. Who dares to look down on me? Guchanexai watched coldly. He noticed a hint of refusal to admit defeat in Bonishang's eyes, and his heart was slightly moved, but more of a guard. Chapter 5 Turning Your Hands into Clouds. At the palace banquet, Bonishang made her debut, and she used clever words and gestures to resolve the disrespect of foreign relatives and ministers to her. Everyone was just relaxed, but she secretly arranged for someone to expose an old case related to the court, which made Guchanexai, who was notorious in the past, become the focus of the court. At the end of the banquet, Guchanexai leaned against the pillar and whispered, "You little palace maid, you are really not immortal." Bonishang smiled, hiding her inner joy. Who says a little palace maid can't turn her hands into clouds? She secretly decided, since fate has given me rebirth, I will fly to the branches and no longer be bound by anyone. Chapter 6 The Little Palace Maid of the Crown Princess. As the days passed, Bonishang's reputation gradually spread throughout the court. She cleverly used Guchanexai's identity and power to control the situation step by step. Gu Zhenxi also began to admire this exiled little palace maid from the bottom of his heart, and he found that her ambition and wisdom far surpassed that of any palace person. One night, the moonlight was like water, and the two sat opposite each other in the palace garden. Bona Shang whispered, Gu Zhenxi, who said you are a dowry? I am the master of this game. Gu Zhenxi stared at her, her smile deepening, maybe, little palace maid. You are no longer the same as you were back then. Chapter 7 Meet your brother-in-law again. Early the next morning, Bona Shang walked into the palace garden, but accidentally bumped into Gu Zhenxi who was practicing swordsmanship. His posture was vigorous, his sword light was like a meteor cutting through the morning mist, and his cold expression made people dare not approach. Little palace maid. Gu Zhenxi put away his sword, his eyebrows and eyes were smiling, but there was a hint of forbearance. What are you planning? Bona Shang spread his hands, smiling gently but with a hint of sharpness, who said there is no fun of small plans in the palace. The eyes of the two intertwined in the morning mist like enemies and friends, but there were subtle emotional fluctuations hidden. At this moment, Bona Shang secretly vowed, this time, she wants to control her fate, not be swayed by fate. Underscore 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 un. Chapter 8 The Dark Tide of the Court. There is an undercurrent surging in the palace. The forces of the Zhao family, a foreign relative, wanted to seize more power by taking advantage of the position of the crown princess and plotted to weaken Bona Shang's influence. After Bona Shang learned the news, he did not panic. She secretly contacted several old ministers loyal to the prince and arranged for an unannounced visit. Gu Zhenxi stood beside her and said coldly, you still like to get yourself in danger. Bona Shang smiled faintly, if you don't take risks, how can you control it? In just a few days, Bona Shang has failed the plans of her relatives one by one, and even made some ministers of the DPRK secretly admire her wisdom. Underscore 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 un. Chapter 9 Overcoming the Crisis. One night, urgent news came from the palace, the prince was seriously ill, the court was in chaos, and the Zhao family, the relatives of the emperor, took the opportunity to nominate their relatives to power. Bona Shang calmly analyzed the situation and secretly planned a countermeasure plan with Gu Zhenxi. She used the prince's trusted guards and some secret information to successfully make the ministers of the DPRK and China recognize the conspiracy of their relatives. Late at night, Gu Zhenxi stood on the palace wall, looking at the dimly lit capital, and sighed in a low voice, little palace maid, you are really amazing. Bona Shang smiled, don't forget, I learned to survive in the southwest penal colony, and the court is just another battlefield. Underscore 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 un. Chapter 10 The Crown Princess's Counterattack. As the prince recovered, Bona Shang's reputation soared and he became a force to be reckoned with in the palace. She gradually arranged Gu Zhenxi by her side, not only as a protection, but also as a pawn to contain her relatives. Gu Zhenxi secretly observed her, her heart fluctuating. He found that this little palace maid was no longer the weak woman she was back then, but a wise man who could influence the situation in the court. One day, Bona Shang and Gu Zhenxi were talking secretly in the depths of the palace, and she whispered, if this court is a chessboard, then I must be the master, and you is the only ally I am willing to trust. Gu Zhenxi looked at her, and the corners of her mouth raised a rare tenderness, I don't trust anyone, but you. Perhaps there are exceptions. Underscore 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 un. Chapter 11 Hidden Power. It was rumored in the palace that a mysterious organization secretly influenced the government with ruthless methods, and was even related to the strange events in the southwest penal colony. Bona Shang decided to find out the truth himself. With the help of Gu Zhenxi's identity, she sneaked into the deep palace forbidden area and found a hidden secret room locked with ancient books, treasures, and mysterious symbols. Here. Is it a continuation of the southwest penal colony? Bona Shang's heart vibrated. Gu Zhenxi stared into the depths of the secret room, every time you turn your hands into clouds, you can seize the opportunity. Little palace maid, this time may be more dangerous than ever. The corners of Bona Shang's mouth raised slightly, the greater the danger, the more you gain. Underscore 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 un. Chapter 12 The Court is Indiana Trouble. One day, the Zhao family instigated a rebellion in an attempt to seize power when the prince was on tour. Bonus Shang arranged in advance, allowing Gu Zhenexai to lead the imperial guards to lurk and quietly turn the situation around. The Zhao family's forces were wiped out, and the DPRK was shaken. The prince trusted Bonus Shang even more and handed over more government affairs to her. Gu Zhenexai observed from the side, secretly admiring in his heart, "Little palace maid, you are no longer just the crown princess, you are the master of the entire court." Bonus Shang smiled softly, "Who says a little palace maid can't control the world?" Chapter 13 Emotional Fog. As power was consolidated, the relationship between Bonus Shang and Gu Zhenexai gradually became complicated. The hostility of the past gradually transformed into tacit understanding, even subtle feelings. One night, the moonlight in the palace was like water, and Gu Zhenexai whispered, "Little palace maid, if I say, I don't want to leave you again, what will you think?" Bonus Shang's heart was shocked, and after a moment of silence, he smiled faintly, "I just want to control my life and not be bound by anyone. Including you." Gu Zhenexai held her hand with a hint of domineering in her smile, "But you can't escape from me anymore." Chapter 14. The Little Palace Maid Flies to the Branch. In the end, Bonus Shang not only successfully resolved the palace conspiracy, but also used the power of the mysterious organization to seize the real power of the DPRK in China. She is no longer a little palace maid who was exiled, but a crown princess who everyone fears, and even became the prince's most trusted advisor. Gu Zhenexai stood beside her, cold and tender, "Little palace maid, this time you won not only fame and fortune, but also my heart." Bonus Shang smiled and his eyes were firm. Flying up the branches is not only for power, but also for freedom. The two looked at each other and smiled, and the palace was lit like a sea, as if the whole world had surrendered to her wisdom and courage. Chapter 15 The Mysterious Guest. Late at night, there was a sudden knock on the door outside the palace gate. Bonus Shang got up and opened the door, only to see a stranger dressed in black kneeling at the door, holding an ancient secret book in his hand. "Little palace maid, please be sure to protect this secret book, it is related to the situation in the world." The man in black spoke in a hurried tone, his eyes flashing with fear. Bonus Shang frowned slightly and took the secret book in his hand. Gu Zhenexai quietly appeared and asked in a cold voice, "Who is this?" The man in black looked up with a solemn expression, "I am from the Southwest Penal Colony. You think that wasteland is just a remote place, but you don't know that there is a shocking power hidden there." Bonus Shang held the secret book tightly, secretly having a premonition in his heart, a new storm is coming. Chapter 16 The Fog of the Court. The secret book records ancient secret methods that can change the power structure of the imperial court, and also imply that the mysterious forces in the Southwest Penal Colony are still secretly controlling. Bonus Shang decided to investigate herself, and she and Gu Zhenexai sneaked into the secret passage of the Deep Palace to avoid guards and spies. "This power. It's stronger than we thought," Gu Zhenexai said in a low voice, with a rare solemnity in his eyes. Bonus Shang smiled slightly, "The greater the danger, the more we can see who is the real ally." The two walked through the secret passage, the shadows reflected on the brick walls intertwined like a chessboard, and every step affected the fate of the entire court. Chapter 17 The Southwest Forces Appear. In the night, a group of men in black quietly appeared and engaged in a fierce confrontation with Bonus Shang and Gu Zhenexai. "Do you think it is safe to control the court?" The leader in black said coldly, "The power of the Southwest Penal Colony has never disappeared, it is just lurking, waiting for the opportunity." Bonus Shang's eyes were cold. "Since you have appeared, let's test our strength." Gu Zhenexai stood with his sword in his hand, the two cooperated tacitly, the sword light and the hidden weapon were intertwined, and although there were many men in black, they were still repelled by them one by one. The night wind rolled up their sleeves, reflecting the light of the palace lamp, and the two stood on the ruins of victory, but they knew in their hearts that the real storm had just begun. Chapter 18 The Decisive Battle in the Court. The next day, Bonus Shang summoned loyal ministers from the DPRK in China to make the contents of the secret letter public, exposing the connection between foreign relatives and the southwestern forces. The prince was furious and ordered Exile to lead the guards to wipe out the traitors in the palace. He also appointed Sheng as the crown princess and palace controller, giving her the highest authority to handle government affairs. Sheng commanded calmly and carefully strategized, so that the traitor had nowhere to hide. In the court, loyal ministers praised her wisdom and courage. Exile whispered beside him, "Little palace maid, you are not just the crown princess, you are the master of the entire court." Sheng smiled, a hint of playfulness flashed in his eyes. "Control the world, and don't forget yourself." Chapter 19 Emotional Breakdown and Reunion. At a court banquet, Sheng and Exile were forced to separate, and Exile was plotted by the enemy for protecting her and fell into a crisis. Sheng faced danger and did not flinch. She rescued Exile with wisdom and courage, and the two reunited under the moonlight in the palace. "You are so stubborn every time." Exile was panting, with tenderness in his eyes, "but I like it." Sheng chuckled and stretched out his hand to cover his hand. "Then, you also have to control this palace with me." The figures of the two blended under the light, as if the haze of the palace was also illuminated by their courage and wisdom. Chapter 20 Final Chapter, Flying Up the Branches. In the end, Sheng successfully resolved the conspiracy inside and outside the palace, completely eliminating the threat of foreign relatives, traitors, and southwestern forces. She not only became the crown princess, but also became an indispensable wise man in the court. Exile chose to stay by her side all the time, and the tacit understanding and love between the two became stronger in the crisis. Sheng stood high in the palace, looking at the dimly lit capital, and muttered in a low voice, "I finally control my life in this palace." Exile walked to her side, held her hand, and said softly, "It's not just you who fly up the branches, but also us." The palace lights are like the sea, and the figures of the two are as dazzling as legends, and the ever-changing court has turned into stability and light in their hands. Postscript. 5 years ago, Sheng and Exile were exiled to the southwest and went through hardships. Today, they have not only overcome the tricks of fate, but also regained control of their lives. It's a story of courage, wisdom, love, and power. Even in the most difficult circumstances, as long as you have faith in your heart, you can fly to the branches, take control of your own destiny, and protect the people you cherish.